The billionaire saw the young maid crying on the phone in the hotel hallway. The next morning, he invited her to his mansion. The carpeted hallway of the Grand Meridian Hotel was hushed, lit by the soft glow of wall sconces and moonlight spilling through tall glass windows. It was almost midnight, and the corridor was empty, except for one figure, curled into herself near the supply closet, her shoulders trembling in silence. Lena pulled her knees tighter to her chest as she held the phone to her ear, her voice a whisper strained with desperation. "No, Mama, you can't sell the wedding ring. Not Papa's ring. I'll figure something out, I promise. Please, just give me a few more days." The line crackled with quiet sobs from the other end. Her mother's voice, faint and cracking, asked, "How? Your sister needs the medication tomorrow." Lena bit her lip, tasting blood. "I'll do overtime. I'll clean every floor in this hotel if I have to. Her voice broke. "Just don't let her think we've given up." A door down the hall opened with a soft click. A tall man in a tailored dark suit stepped out, distractedly scrolling through his phone. Andrew Callahan, CEO of Callahan Equity, had just wrapped a transcontinental investor call. The night had been long, and his expression carried the familiar weight of million-dollar decisions. But the moment he heard her voice, something shifted. His steps slowed. "Konsin loi vidasin ratrong nego," Lena whispered into the phone, voice cracking on the final word. "Konjin lo vi la gang nang." Andrew stopped, just out of her view behind a marble column. For a moment he considered walking past, pretending not to hear. It was none of his business. She was hotel staff, likely one of the many who passed him in the lobby unnoticed every day. But he did not walk past. Instead, he stood still, watching her from a respectful distance. Lena wiped her face quickly, stood, and forced her spine straight. She ended the call without saying goodbye, tucked the phone into her uniform pocket, and adjusted the cleaning cart beside her. Her eyes were puffy, her cheeks blotchy, but her hands moved with quiet discipline. She knocked gently on the next suite, forced a customer service smile, and disappeared inside. Andrew remained where he was for a while longer, staring at the empty hallway. Something in her voice, more than pain, more than fear, had cut through the static of his routine life. It wasn't pity he felt. It was something quieter, something that asked, when was the last time you looked at someone and actually saw them? That night, he returned to his suite, poured a glass of still water, and sat by the window for longer than usual. The city below glittered like a digital map, perfect, powerful, distant. Somewhere out there was a girl scrubbing bathroom tiles to pay for her sister's insulin. He didn't know her name, but he remembered the way she had apologized for her very existence. The next morning, Lena returned to the same hallway, pushing her cart, eyes dull from lack of sleep. She had spent the night calculating how many hours of work she could pick up before collapsing. As she reached the corner room, a man in a gray suit stepped into the hallway. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm but firm. She turned, startled. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He simply looked observant. "I'm not a guest complaining," he added, noting her wary expression. "But I overheard you last night. I was in the room at the end of the hall." Lena's face flushed. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." He raised a hand gently. "Don't apologize." She froze. Most people said nothing, or worse, said too much. He said just enough. He pulled something from his pocket and handed it to her. A sleek, dark card with his name engraved in silver, Andrew Callahan. On the back, an address. "If you're open to something different," he said, "come by tonight, 7 o'clock. "What is it?" she asked, wary. "A job, not charity, not pity." Lena looked down at the card. Her hands were trembling again, but not from fear. "Why me?" He studied her for a moment before answering. "Because most people cry when they break. You cried, and then went back to work." With that, he nodded once and walked away, his stride composed, as though he had just signed off on another deal. But inside, something had shifted, and for the first time in years, Lena felt as though someone had truly seen her, not as a maid, not as a problem, but as a person. The address on the card led to a quiet neighborhood just outside the city, where the noise of traffic faded into the rustling of trees and the distant chirp of evening birds. Lena stood at the front gate of the property, a wrought iron arch draped in ivy, clutching the card in her hand like a fragile ticket to another world. She had changed out of her hotel uniform into the neatest clothes she owned, a faded blouse, clean jeans, and borrowed flats a size too big. Her hair was pulled back in a modest braid. Every part of her wanted to turn around. This could be a trap, or a joke, or a test she was never meant to pass. But something deeper, quieter kept her feet rooted. A soft buzz sounded as she pressed the gate intercom. A voice, female, warm, professional, came through. "Miss Lena, please come in. Mr. Callahan is expecting you." The gate creaked open. The house wasn't what she imagined. It wasn't a palace or some cold modern cube. It was an old colonial-style home, with wooden shutters and a wide wraparound porch. Lights glowed from within, not bright or grand, just warm. The front door opened before she knocked. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a crisp white blouse and comfortable flats, greeted her with a kind smile. "I'm Mara. I manage the household. Come, I'll show you where to wait." Lena stepped into a hallway that smelled faintly of sandalwood and old books. She passed a cozy sitting room, a dining room lined with shelves of old vinyl records, and a kitchen where the light was still on. Everything felt lived in, but not worn, intentional. Comfortable. Mara led her into a small sunroom with 2 chairs, a pot of tea, and nothing else but quiet. "He'll be with you shortly," Mara said, and left her there. 10 minutes passed. Lena was just about to rise and leave when Andrew entered, not in a suit this time, but in dark jeans and a navy sweater. He looked different, without the armor of his tailored wardrobe, still composed but more human. "Thank you for coming," he said simply. Lena stood. "I wasn't sure I should. I wasn't sure you would." She waited for him to explain why she was here, why he'd invited her, why someone like him would notice someone like her. But instead, he poured her a cup of tea and handed it to her. "I want to offer you a job," he said, sitting opposite her. "It's not charity. It pays fairly and it's temporary." "What kind of job?" she asked. He studied her face, then leaned back slightly, as if measuring the air before speaking. "You'll live here. You'll work as a house assistant, help Mara, assist with organizing some personal archives, and occasionally help me review documents, books, letters." "Letters?" "I'm digitizing my father's estate. It's mostly dull. I need someone who can read closely and notice small things. You're detail-oriented. I saw that yesterday." Lena stared into her tea. "Why me?" "I don't know yet," Andrew said honestly, "but I trust that I'll find out." She hesitated. "I have a job at the hotel." "I already spoke to management. You were working part-time. They've agreed to release you if you take this offer." She frowned. "That's very coordinated. I don't do many things halfway," he said, not unkindly. A long silence stretched between them. Then Lena asked, "What happens when the job ends?" Andrew shrugged. "Then we part ways, or we don't. That's not the part I'm planning." She stared at him, trying to read him. He didn't look like he pitied her. He didn't look amused. He looked interested. "I need to send money home, for my sister's treatment. You'll be paid weekly, in advance. Full health coverage while you're here. No cameras, no NDAs. Just one rule." She raised an eyebrow. "No apologies. Not for being here, not for needing help, not for surviving." Her eyes watered, but she blinked quickly. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's enough," Andrew said. He stood, extended a hand. She took it. His grip was steady, not cold, not controlling, just steady. And for the first time in a very long time, Lena felt something she hadn't dared to hope for. Not safety, not security, a beginning. The guest room Mara showed Lena was simple but thoughtful. A soft cream comforter, a small desk by the window, and a vase with a single blooming lily. On the dresser sat a note in neat handwriting. Fresh linens. If you need anything, knock twice on the kitchen wall. Lena unpacked her few belongings and folded her hotel uniform into a drawer, unsure if she'd ever need it again. The next morning began before dawn. Mara greeted her with 2 mugs of coffee and a tidy checklist. Breakfast is at 7. Andrew takes tea, not coffee. Toast barely browned. You won't serve him. Just keep things moving. Lena nodded, scribbling notes in a small notebook. She tried not to show how strange it felt to work in a house without being barked at. By 8, the house had settled into its rhythm. She cleaned instinctively, folding napkins, polishing surfaces already spotless. It wasn't nerves, it was habit. She was used to proving herself before she was allowed to belong. Mid-morning, she entered a tall-ceilinged room lined with boxes and old books. The labels read, Letters, 197111985, Campaign Archives, Founded Reputation. She was still studying a faded campaign flyer when Andrew entered behind her. Find anything interesting? She turned quickly. I didn't mean to intrude. He shrugged. The door wasn't locked. She glanced at the boxes. So many papers. He documented everything, Andrew said. Speeches, receipts, letters he never sent. He believed history happened in the margins. Then he handed her a folder. This one's yours. Disorganized. Sort it. Read it. She looked up. Is it private? Just personal. To people he admired, or couldn't forgive. Or loved, but never told. Lena hesitated. And you want me to read them? I think you'll understand them better than I can. She nodded. In the days that followed, Lena found a rhythm. Mornings in the kitchen with Mara, afternoons in the parlor sorting letters, often pausing to blink away tears. At night, she wandered the halls, letting her thoughts settle. Andrew came and went, quiet, present. She saw him in the garden, the library, passing in the hallway. He didn't hover, but his gaze often lingered, not watching, but seeing. Others lived in the house too. Mara's brother, a veteran with a cane, painted quietly on the porch. Beth, who'd once been a nurse, came twice a week to cook. None were employees, none were guests. All, it seemed, had been given another chance. I didn't expect you to be a gardener, she said. He looked up. I'm not. But they're mine. If something dies, I want to know I tried. She stepped closer. That's rare from someone like you. He dusted his hands. Power isn't about saving things. It's about caring enough to try. They stood quietly. Then he added, I don't bring people here because they're broken. I bring them because they still try. Her voice was soft. Even if they don't know what to do with a second chance? He looked at her. Especially then. As Lena walked back toward the house, something inside her shifted. She wasn't being watched for flaws or judged for her past. She was being seen. And that, more than anything, terrified her. Rain drizzled softly against the windows, painting slow-moving streaks across the glass. The house was quiet that evening. Mara had taken her brother to a specialist's appointment, and Beth had left early with a cold. For the first time since Lena arrived, the house felt truly still. She was organizing the last of the letters personal folder in the parlor when Andrew stepped in, a mug in hand and a book tucked beneath his arm. He hesitated at the door, then asked, Do you mind some company? She looked up from her stack, surprised. Of course not. He took the seat across from her. Not too close, not formal, just near enough that the silence between them didn't feel awkward. I was reading the letter your father wrote to the mayor in '84, she said, voice soft. He never sent it. Andrew exhaled a quiet laugh. He wrote a lot of things he never sent. Why? He believed the process of writing something honest was more important than delivering it, said it helped him know what he really thought. She turned the folded paper in her hands. It's strange. He sounds less like a politician here, and more like someone trying very hard to still believe in people. Andrew looked at her. He was. Most days, so am I. The rain thickened, tapping more insistently now on the windows. Lena placed the letter down and reached for her tea. Her hands, she noticed, were trembling just slightly from fatigue. Andrew caught the movement but didn't comment. Instead, he asked gently, "Have you always been the one holding your family together?" She blinked, startled. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I know what someone looks like when they're tired of pretending not to be tired." For a moment, she said nothing. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. Then, slowly, Lena set her mug down and leaned back in the armchair. "My father died when I was 11, she said. "My mom worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I started cleaning offices at 13, not because anyone made me, just because the electric bill doesn't wait for grief." Andrew listened, his posture relaxed, eyes steady, no interruption, no pity. "My sister Ellie has type 1 diabetes," Lena continued. "There were days I lied to her and said I wasn't hungry, so she'd eat the last pack of instant noodles. She was 8. I told her it was like camping." Her voice wavered. "And then one day, my stepfather said I'd never be more than a maid, that I should stop pretending I was meant for anything else." Andrew's jaw tensed, but he said nothing. "So I believed him," she whispered, "until recently." He finally spoke. "What changed?" "You." The word came out before she could think it through. Her eyes darted away, embarrassed. "Not you as a person, but this place, the way people move here, like they're not waiting to be kicked out." Andrew's voice was lower now. "No one's kicked out, not unless they stop trying." Another silence passed, but it wasn't empty. "Can I ask you something?" she said, quieter. He nodded. "What happened in the room upstairs? The music room. It's always locked." Andrew looked down at his mug. "My fiancée played there. Every morning. She said the world made more sense after Chopin." Lena's eyes softened. "She passed away?" "Plane crash, 4 years ago." He looked up at her. "I don't keep the room locked because I can't go in. I lock it so I don't forget what it sounded like with her in it." She didn't know what to say. So she didn't say anything. She just let the rain fill the silence. Eventually she stood, crossed the room, and placed the worn letter gently in its folder. Then she turned to him. "I can't play piano," she said, "but I can dust it when you're ready." Andrew met her gaze. "Thank you." As he walked her back toward the hallway, he paused before the stairs. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "I forgot to mention, your tea, it's always steeped 30 seconds too long." She raised a brow. "You noticed?" He smirked. "I noticed things." And as Lena disappeared around the corner, she realized with quiet certainty, he wasn't watching her like someone assessing a risk. He was watching her like someone learning how to stay. The sun broke through the gray for the first time in days. The morning air smelled of lavender and loamy earth, and Lena stood at the back of the house with her sleeves rolled up, dirt beneath her nails, sorting through a shipment of fabric remnants delivered to the side porch. Andrew had tried to be subtle. She knew the package came from one of the most reputable textile shops in the state, and it hadn't been cheap. But the order slip listed the buyer as anonymous, and Lena wasn't naive. She walked back inside, the fabric folded neatly in her arms, and found Andrew in the study, flipping through an old binder. "You didn't have to do that," she said without preamble. He looked up. "Do what?" "Buy me fabric, like you're sneaking it through the back door." Andrew set the binder aside. "You said you wanted to start sewing again. I thought this might help." She hesitated, then said, "It would, but I don't want to be someone who waits to be helped." "I didn't offer it as help," he said quietly. "I offered it as belief." Lena exhaled slowly. "Then let me earn it." Later that afternoon, she met with Mara and proposed an idea: to open a small sewing and skill-sharing workshop in the unused east wing of the estate, one that could be run by the residents themselves, offering simple classes, tailoring, mending, even basic budgeting. Mara listened, then smiled. "Andrew won't say it, but he's been waiting for someone to suggest something like this. By the end of the week, Lena had transformed the old ballroom into a space filled with folding tables, sewing kits, borrowed machines, and chairs arranged in uneven rows. Flyers were handwritten. Invitations were slipped into coat pockets and grocery bags across town. The first to show up was Beth, holding a pair of torn scrubs and saying, "If you can teach me how to fix this, I might believe in miracles." Others followed. Some came just to talk. Some came because they had nothing else to do. Some came because they were tired of being treated like problems. Andrew showed up unannounced on the second Saturday, quietly watching from the doorway as Lena guided a young mother through the basics of hemming. He didn't speak. He didn't interrupt. But later, after the last student left and Lena was folding up chairs, he approached. "You're different when you teach," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Like you don't realize you're the one building something." Lena smiled faintly. "I think I'm just remembering what it feels like not to be scared." He stepped closer, then hesitated. "When this all ends, when you're ready to move on, what do you want to do?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I want it to be mine. Even if it's small, even if it's just a corner of the world." Andrew nodded. "Then build it, and if you ever need tools, you don't have to ask." That night, Lena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The quiet of the room was no longer oppressive. It was full of questions she had stopped being afraid to ask. She no longer felt like a guest. She no longer felt like someone passing through someone else's life. She felt, finally, like she was shaping her own. And somewhere not far down the hall, Andrew sat at his desk, reviewing spreadsheets he no longer cared about, thinking not about numbers, but about a girl in borrowed shoes who had asked to build something on her own terms. It was not admiration he felt. It wasn't affection. It was something deeper. Respect, paired with the slow, quiet realization. He didn't want her to leave, not because she made the house brighter, but because she made him want to stay. The invitation arrived in a pale blue envelope, embossed with silver foil. The Silverbridge Community Gala, honoring local change-makers. Lena nearly laughed when she saw her name. Someone had nominated her after the sewing program gained attention. She'd considered declining. "You should go," Andrew said when he caught her lingering over the envelope. "You earned this." "It's not my world," she murmured. "It wasn't mine either," he replied, "until I stopped pretending I needed permission to walk into it." Lena went. She wore a navy dress she'd altered herself from donated fabric. Her shoes were second-hand but clean. She looked like herself and carried herself like she had stopped apologizing for that. Andrew arrived separately, dressed in a charcoal suit. He moved through the crowd like he belonged, but looked only for her. When their eyes met, he smiled, subtle, just for her. The event started with polite greetings and small bites. Then came the presentation. A screen showed nominees, community leaders, teachers, volunteers. Applause followed each name. Then a photo appeared of Lena, not from the workshop, but a grainy image from 3 years ago. She stood outside a courthouse, wearing her hotel uniform, next to a lawyer and her furious stepfather. The caption read, "Former suspect in theft case cleared due to lack of evidence. Whispers spread. Isn't that her?" Lena froze. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Her stomach dropped. She wanted to disappear. Before she could move, Andrew rose. Calmly, he walked to the stage, took the mic from the startled host and said, "Thank you for reminding us that the internet never forgets, especially when it wants to shame someone who dared to rebuild." He looked at the crowd. "You've seen a picture. Let me tell you about the person in it." His voice was steady. "This is Lena. She teaches sewing to those told they had no future. She buys fabric from her own paycheck. She brings dignity to people without ever saying the word. She survived what most of us couldn't, and chose kindness over bitterness." He turned to her. "And if you think an accusation defines someone's worth, you haven't met Lena." Then, with quiet finality, he extended his hand. The room hushed, not with suspicion, but awe. Lena walked toward him, not needing rescue, but drawn by the look in his eyes that said, "You never had to run alone." They left soon after. Outside the house, the wind tugged at her dress. Her hair had come undone. She turned to him. "Why did you do that? You weren't supposed to explain yourself tonight. You were supposed to be honored, but you didn't have to." "Yes," he said gently. "I did." She looked down. "I hate that it still follows me." "I don't," he replied. "It means you never stopped caring who you become." Then she asked, "Would you still have stood up for me if it had been true?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, because what we've lived through matters, but what we choose next matters more." She looked at him, eyes full but steady. "I didn't expect this." "Neither did I," he said. "But I'm not walking away from it." This time, when she reached for his hand, he didn't just take it. He pulled her into his arms, deliberate, certain, and in the soft porch light, the past lost its grip. What remained was the quiet, solid promise of everything they would face. Together. The next morning, Lena awoke to the smell of fresh bread and the soft clinking of porcelain. When she stepped into the kitchen, Mara was setting a third cup on the table. Beside her, standing tall and composed in a cream coat and modest heels, was a woman Lena had only seen in framed photographs. "Lena," Mara said gently, "this is Eleanor Callahan, Andrew's mother." Lena swallowed. "It's nice to meet you, ma'am." Eleanor's expression was unreadable, but her nod wasn't cold. "I've heard quite a bit about you." Andrew entered a moment later, casual in his button-up and jeans, but something about his posture changed when he saw his mother, not wary, just quietly braced. They had breakfast together. Mara served, but Eleanor insisted on pouring the tea. She asked Lena polite questions about her program, about how she liked the estate, about her favorite authors. Nothing pointed, nothing harsh. But under every word was an unspoken question. "Who are you, and what are you doing here with my son?" After breakfast, Eleanor asked Lena to walk with her through the garden. Lena obliged. The air was cool, scented with damp earth and fresh lavender. "I lost my husband to cancer," Eleanor said suddenly, not looking at her. "Andrew was 23. I watched him turn every piece of grief into concrete buildings, deals, silence. Then he lost her. That almost broke him." Lena walked quietly beside her, hands clasped in front of her. "I'm not here to question your character, Lena," Eleanor continued, "but I am here to ask a question only you can answer." She stopped walking, turned to face her. "Are you here because you love him, or because he's the only one who didn't look away?" Lena's throat tightened, but she didn't look down. "I didn't come here to fall in love," she said. "I came because I had nowhere left. But what I found here wasn't just kindness. It was the first place that didn't treat me like I was lucky to be allowed in." She paused. "I don't love him because he saved me. I love him because he never once acted like I needed to be." Eleanor studied her. Then she nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "I believe you," she said, "but I'm his mother. I'll worry until I die." That afternoon, Eleanor remained longer than planned. She stayed for tea. She listened to Ellie, Lena's sister, read aloud from the corner. She walked into the sewing room unannounced and smiled faintly when she saw Beth teaching a 12-year-old girl how to stitch a button. Before she left, she handed Andrew a small tin. "You used to love these," she said. "I made them yesterday." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "You cooked?" "Baked," she corrected. "Don't be dramatic." She turned to Lena one last time. "I hope you stay," she said. "Not because he needs someone, but because he finally let someone in." That night, Lena found the tin on the kitchen table. Inside were 6 almond shortbread cookies. Only 3 remained, and on the counter beside them was a folded note, written in Eleanor's fine, slanted script. "It takes strength to survive alone, but it takes something braver to stay when you're finally safe." Lena stood still for a long moment. Then she picked up a cookie, smiled faintly, and knew she wasn't just being accepted. She was being trusted. The community center stood on the edge of town, once an abandoned post office, now freshly painted in warm tones, the windows wide open to let in the breeze and the sound of children laughing from inside. At the front gate hung a modest wooden sign carved by hand, Bridge House, for new beginnings. It had taken 6 months, countless conversations, permits, donations, volunteers. Lena had overseen every detail, from the sewing machines in the upstairs studio to the reading nook by the fireplace. Andrew had handled logistics, legalities, and late-night budgeting sessions, but the spirit of it, that had been Lena's from the beginning. On the morning of the grand opening, the air was electric. Guests trickled in, families, donors, neighbors, and a few familiar faces from the gala. Those who had once whispered now returned with cautious admiration. Lena stood near the door, clipboard in hand, checking final details. She wore a soft white blouse and navy skirt, simple and elegant. Her hair was pulled back, but a few strands danced in the wind. Andrew watched her from a distance, hands in his pockets, pride etched into the lines of his face. She hadn't asked for credit. She hadn't asked for anything, but she had built something lasting, and he knew this was the day he would ask her one thing, at last, for himself. The ceremony began. Speeches were given. Mara spoke about community. Beth shared how the sewing room saved her from a loneliness she hadn't named. Even Eleanor offered a few words, short, honest, and, to everyone's surprise, heartfelt. Then the host turned to Lena. "Our final words come from the woman who made this place real, Lena Torres." She stepped up to the microphone, heart pounding. Andrew saw her hands shake slightly as she took a breath, then speak. "I used to think surviving was enough," she began. "That if I could just keep moving, keep earning, keep my head down, I'd be okay. But survival isn't the same as living. You can't rebuild alone. You need safe places, safe people." She paused, looking across the crowd. Her gaze met Andrew's, just for a second. He smiled. "This place isn't about rescue. It's about rebuilding, and I'm proud we're building it together." Applause erupted. She stepped down, and as she reached the last step off the small stage, Andrew was there, waiting. He took her hand gently, then turned back toward the front. "There's one more thing," he said to the crowd, voice calm but steady. Lena looked at him, confused, until she saw the faint glint of silver in his other hand. Andrew took a slow breath. "I used to think success meant building walls, but I was wrong. It means building doors, letting the right people in and staying when they do." He turned to her fully now, his voice quieter, for her alone. "You didn't save me, Lena. You reminded me that I wanted to be someone worth staying for. And that's why today, I'm not offering you a title or a mansion or a future already written." He opened the small velvet box. "I'm offering you this, because every day since you came into my life, I've chosen you, and I want to keep choosing you. Will you marry me?" The room went still. Lena stared at the ring inside, simple, elegant, with a delicate band of white gold and a small stone. Not new, she recognized it instantly. It was a ring she had once sketched in the corner of a notebook during a sewing lesson, a design she had never shared. "How did you?" she whispered. "I found the sketch," he said. "I asked a friend to make it. I wanted it to be yours, even before it was mine to give." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. Slow, sure, radiant. "Yes," she said. Applause filled the room. Ellie ran up from the crowd and hugged them both, shouting, "He's finally part of our family now." That night, after the celebration quieted and guests drifted home, Lena and Andrew sat on the steps of Bridge House, barefoot, holding hands, listening to the wind in the trees. "We did it," she murmured. "No," Andrew corrected gently. "You did it. I just stood still long enough to be changed." Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you did." He kissed the top of her head, and in that small, quiet moment, under stars and between laughter and history, they didn't talk about wedding dates or money or legacy. They just sat together, Two people who had chosen each other, over and over again, and would keep choosing. Forever. If this story touched your heart, if you saw a part of yourself in Lena's struggle, or Andrew's quiet transformation, then know this. We all deserve a second chance, not the kind that's given in pity, but the kind that's built with trust, effort, and love. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing one person can say to another is not, "I'll save you," but, "I see you, and I'm staying." Thank you for spending time with us. If you believe in stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that love often begins in the quietest places, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. This is where hearts come home. We'll see you in the next story.